Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. We here at Another View extend our deepest condolences to the families who lost loved ones in last week's shooting rampage in Building 2 of the Municipal Center in Virginia Beach. We wish speedy healing for those who are still recovering from their wounds. And we pray for Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, and our nation as we grapple with the why of these mass shootings and how to stop them. We will address these issues in future programs. But for today, we honor those who are suffering by giving them space to grieve and to heal. When we come back, we bring you an Another View history lesson on the Let Freedom Ring bell. We'll be right back.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. In case you're just joining us, we extend our heartfelt sympathies to the families of those who were killed last week during the mass shooting in Virginia Beach. And we wish speedy healing for those who are still recovering from their wounds. Producer Lisa Godley and I grappled with our show topic for today. Should we scrap our planned program and do something on what happened? Or should we bring alternative programming and allow people some time to grieve and to heal? Well, we opted for the latter. We will address issues surrounding mass shootings and how to stop them in future programs. But today we bring you an Another View history lesson about perseverance, resilience, determination, and freedom. Attributes that are certainly appropriate still in today's times. Please welcome to Another View, Ms. Connie Matthews Harshaw, president of the Let Freedom Ring Foundation. Connie, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. And Stephen Seals with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. And Stephen, you've got a title that goes from here to Williamsburg.
Oh, yes, it does. I do a number of things with the foundation. I play one of the nation builder characters, James Lafayette, who was a spy during the American Revolution. I also do community outreach for the foundation, and I also do program development management for the 40th anniversary of African American interpretation.
Wow. And do you do radio too? Because you got a great voice.
I always say I have a body for radio. So yes.
So we want to talk today about the historic First Baptist Church, Williamsburg, and particularly the Let Freedom Ring bell and why it is so important. So I want to take us back first to the history. And I think I'll start with you, Stephen, and then bring you in, Connie. So there were a group of enslaved people,
yes,
who came together under a bush, under foliage.
In essence. So the way that the laws were back then, there was the state church, which was the Anglican church. Mm-hmm. And if you were any other religion, or as they called them at the time, dissenting religions, you had rules. You had to be licensed. You couldn't close your doors. You couldn't have structures that you were worshiping in unless you got special permission. And that was most especially true of the Baptists. Mm-hmm. But, God finds a way. So many of the enslaved and freed blacks in the Williamsburg area, they wanted to be able to worship. And Reverend Moses got them all together to do so under arbors, around bushes, wherever they could. And, First Baptist likes to say they started in 1776, but in all honesty, they were probably around long before then.
Long before then, even. But Connie, that was almost a death sentence for them in terms of if they got caught.
Absolutely, because there was a prohibition on gathering, and we couldn't do that. So what we did, and I say we because I think I was there.
You channel?
I'm channeling. That's what I'm channeling. But the slaves that took care of the families in Williamsburg worshipped at Bruton Parish, and they had to sit in the back, and they couldn't really express themselves the way they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And so, we have a tendency to be loud and very expression. Mm-hmm. So, we went ahead and decided to assemble and at the risk of our lives and liberty, to worship our God the way we wanted to.
And who was the Cole family? that allowed them to have a place to go, a building to go into eventually?
Well, the gentleman was a townsman who actually rode by on his horse, and that's probably you'll see from our film. And he heard, and he was so moved by the worship of the slaves that he offered his carriage house. And as long as they used it for religious purposes, he allowed them to do that and to worship in his home on Nassau Street.
And that's where the church was formally formed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's where the first building was, on Nassau Street in Colonial Williamsburg. And it stayed there until 1956. It was there from 400 years. So then the current location on Scotland Street was built in 1956.
Yeah, 56.
After.
So during the 1800s, there were women in the church. I'm looking at Stephen, but we're Connie and I are winking at each other. There were women in the church who decided that the church needed some things.
Indeed, they did. And one of the things that they decided the church needed was a bell. And the bell was forged. It was made. It was brought to the church.
Do we know who made it? Do we know where it was made? Anything like that?
When we were doing the studies of it and the archaeology on it, we found interesting things on the bell when we were cleaning it. It looks like it was forged in Cincinnati, because that's one of the things that it says on the bell itself. Because we were trying to figure that, and we were trying to figure out dates. 1880s, 1860s. When was this forged? When was it put up into the church? And so, yeah, it looks like it was probably manufactured in Cincinnati.
So, okay, this is the 1800s. These are black people who, this congregation, this church was formed by African Americans for African Americans. How much would a bell cost in that time, and where and how? Was it bake sales? How were they raising the money?
Well, it was the women's auxiliary that raised the money, and you and I know, and everybody probably in the nation, that if you want something done, give it to a black woman and she'll get it done for you. Ask the people in northern Alabama. So they did. I think it was about $150, which at that time was a lot of money. So you're right. There were the fish fries and the bake sales and all of that, but they got it done. They got this bell, and it fell in disrepair, and so we couldn't. It sat silent for many, many years.
So it ran from 1800s until the 1950s,
yes,
or so. The bell was okay, and then it stopped just before the civil rights movement.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
So what happened to it? What went wrong?
Well, it sat there. We don't know exactly what happened. We know that it fell in disrepair. So I'm not a bell expert.
Yeah, we found some cracks and some very interesting fixes that had been done at the time, and the fixes were done in order to preserve the bell, but it meant that the bell couldn't be rung, and that's what we found as we were cleaning.
So before we get to the restoration of the bell, what did the church use the bell for when it was ringable?
The call to worship. Yes, the call to worship.
Okay.
And it's now that we have this bell, I'm now attuned to every church on the planet. At 11 o'clock in the morning when I'm riding by, whether it's a Catholic church, Presbyterian church, you hear that bell, and that sound is the call to worship. It's a universal sound. So our bell didn't ring on Scotland Street.
Oh, okay. Now the significance of it gels even more. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about the historic First Baptist Church of Williamsburg and the Let Freedom Ring bell and its significance not only to history but to today. So 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Connie, you're a member of the church.
I am.
And when it was time, what was the catalyst that made the church members say, it's time to make this bell ring again?
Well, I wish I could say that That was the beginning of it. But the story is that I'm getting is that there were two men sitting at Aroma Coffee, and they were deciding, and Steve, feel free to jump in here anytime, because sure. I was busy working for the then President Obama in Washington, and I didn't get to spend as much time in Williamsburg as I wanted to. But they thought about this empty room that was over at the college that they could do something with. So they talked to
College of William and Mary.
And they talked about this bell that sat there silent during the Civil Rights era, that was at the church, a historic church. And they came up with an idea to do this.
They did, and it was a question of, the more they talked, the thing that came out, and I love it because it's something that we still say at Colonial Williamsburg and also at the church, is that there are two freedom bells. And at that point, neither of them rang. One's in Philadelphia, one's at First Baptist. So let's make one of those freedom bells ring again. And we had a number of experts at Colonial Williamsburg who could hopefully take a look at this bell, see what was wrong with it, figure out how to fix it. And so that kind of started the relationship. We wanted to do something. We needed to do something. This bell was important. First Baptist Church was important.
So not just the call to worship now. We were living in a time, it's this backdrop of racial tension and, trouble in the country.
This was 2016.
Okay. The church was about to celebrate its 240th anniversary, which, that's a time for a church to be worshiping still. So not just the call to worship, but the call to freedom, equality, unity, to try to get the nation and the state and Williamsburg and our communities to focus on trying to heal a racial divide. So it sort of took on a different kind of symbolism. And so now when it's not just a call to worship, it's a call for the nation to heal this racial divide. And we think, what better place than Williamsburg, the colonial capital of the state?
It's interesting. Williamsburg has had such a history of racial division and issues, but there's been a lot of movement in Williamsburg to turn this around. I mean, can you two talk a little bit about where the mindset is now and kind of what was the catalyst to start the I call it the Williamsburg movement, if you will. I mean, you've got the Lemon Project at William and Mary. You have people looking at the way workers were treated, while they were employed there. You have the history of the church. You have the history of Colonial Williamsburg and how it was told.
Well, and I think that's probably the crux of it. As I said earlier, I'm doing program development for the 40th anniversary of African American interpretation at Colonial Williamsburg. That started in 1979. There were so many museums at the time that were just not telling the story. And especially for Williamsburg, it really meant something because they had done the first sort of study to figure out what the makeup of Williamsburg was in the 18th century. And when you find out that Williamsburg was a town that was 52% black, most enslaved, and at that point, the story of that 52% just wasn't being told. But if you were going to tell the story, how were you going to tell it? And so many museums were telling the stories of our people, but they weren't necessarily doing it in a way that had our point of view in it. And that's really what social history is about. That's really what happened in 1979, was that we were looking at our history not from just that specific European view, that view of the victors that gets to write the history. But it's like, what did that enslaved person go through? What were their lives? What was their life about? What were they thinking in their heads? What was their point of view? And when you start to do that, you start to humanize them. It's no longer just statistics, but it's people. And when you start to look at them as people, you start to look at them as people that are like you, maybe. You start to look at them as not just numbers, but as mothers, as fathers, as lovers, even as haters. But you see them that way, and It humanizes the dehumanized.
You know, I'm thinking back to the enslaved folks that put together the church in the beginning. I can't imagine that they were just allowed to just go on off and just worship and nobody said anything.
Yeah, there was definitely stuff being said.
What did they go through? What? Give us a sense of what was happening.
You can imagine it being against the law to have a gathering. But, you know, African American people have amazing faith. They step out on faith. In the face of everything that was going on around them, they had God. And that brought them every time through whatever they were going through. So in the face of all that, and I want to be clear too, and I'm really a champion about this, is that this African American history story is American history.
Yes.
I want everybody to understand that it wasn't just the black folks. They had white folks, the Cole family. They had people supporting them, saying, on the very basis that this country was founded for religious freedom, these people are worshiping God. Now, of course, our Bibles might have said it a little different. They might have been teaching us a different lesson or a different language or message. But they had that basic respect for they're worshiping. Let's go in and support them and help them and not get in their way. So, of course, until the Nat Turner Rebellion.
That
story changed just a little bit, you know. But then, again, after that, we reassembled. The church reassembled and got back on its feet and started to worship again.
Mm-hmm. So this is the oldest, am I correct, continuous African American congregation, or one of the oldest?
I would like to say that, but I do know that there's several other African American churches in the nation that are making the same claim about being the very first. Okay. So what we usually say, Pastor Davis, our pastor, usually says we're one of the earliest Baptists, First Baptists, founded by slaves, for slaves, but open to everyone. Okay, so we want to be clear about that too.
And everyone can come visit today.
Oh, and they do, and they have such a good time.
Yeah, I'll bet. So, Stephen, talk to me about the restoration process and what you all went through. First of all, were the archaeologists and others who were involved with it excited about the fact that they'd have this opportunity?
Oh, extremely excited and scared. I mean,
really?
You're dealing with an artifact that has been there but hasn't been used. What are you going to find when you get up there? What are you going to see, and what are you going to be able to do with it? And it's in this tower, so it's not easy to get to. It's not easy to service. Anytime you have to mess with it, you need a crane. Well, what are you going to do? And so they were really excited, but at the same time they were going, what are we going to find?
Wow.
And
so was it restored in place, or did you take it away?
They did some of the work in the actual steeple in the church, yes, but they had to also take it out to get to the bell, and to be able to do the work. And part of that challenge too was managing expectations.
Yes.
Because
so there was no guarantee that you were going to be able to make it ring.
You don't tell black folks you're going to take their bell out of their church and fix it and bring it back and it's going to ring, and then it doesn't ring. Okay. And especially the women's auxiliary.
Yes.
Okay. So
they had a special tie to that bell. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And they should have. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did. So it was expert upon expert, and we brought in experts to take a look at it too, because if it wasn't going to ring, we were going to make sure it was preserved. But I remember the meetings, just sitting down and figuring out, because there were some very difficult choices we had to make about making sure that the bell wasn't just going to ring for 1 year, not ring for 2 years, that it was going to ring for 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. And there were some difficult choices that we had to make over when it was going to be ready and how it was going to be ready. I'll give you an example. We were trying to figure out how could the bell mechanism be made to ring in a way that would have it preserved. And the answer was, it needs to be motorized. And it's not the bell that moves anymore. It's something that bangs the bell to ring it. It apparently, it's easier to do, but it also preserves the bell. But there's something about pushing a button to ring a bell that's not the same as pulling the string.
Right. Yeah.
And so we had to find a way to preserve the bell and make the bell still be able to work over time, but not necessarily, but we wanted to make sure that you rang that bell. There's something visceral about pulling on that bell and hearing that bong, bong. We had those conversations for weeks.
Were you able to maintain the actual, what do I want to say, material that the bell was made out of, or did you have to substitute things? Or
no, we were lucky. It was a well-made bell. So the bell that's there now, repaired, is the original, and the pieces of the bell itself, it is the original bell.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Have you been to Colonial Williamsburg? Have you visited First Baptist Church Williamsburg and rang the bell? If you have, give us a call and tell us about your experience. Chuck joins us from Chesapeake. Hi, Chuck. You're in the air.
Thanks, Barbara, for taking my call.
Sure.
You guys are taking me way back down in my childhood now.
Oh.
I remember my grandmother. She used to attend Second Bethel Baptist Church, and in the community where we live, and there was a bell there, and they used that bell, like guests were saying, call to worship, and if someone would die in the community, they would ring the bell for that to let other people know that there was a tragedy. And they always knew what each ringing of the bell meant. Sundays, it was for church, and through the week, if something happened, they rang to let people in the community know that there was something wrong.
Wow. Chuck, thanks so much for sharing your story. We appreciate that. Connie, I saw you smile.
I was smiling because at a time when there were no cell phones or text messages or any of that, the bell, I'm from the South. I was born in Georgia, so I understand exactly what Chuck's saying. Whenever that bell rang, something in the community was happening. So not just the call to worship, but also the message needed to get out.
Wow. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call and let us know if you've rung the bell and what it meant to you. And I want to talk a little bit about the experience. So, okay, we build the bell. I'm trying to keep this narrative going in the right direction. I'm all over the place. We rebuild the bell. The first time, the test, what was that like?
I'm an anxious person, so I can say that the word that I had was anxiety.
Wow.
We hoped that it was going to work, and we wanted to make sure that the congregation got to ring it first. So that was the thing, too. We wanted to make sure that it was done before we got to February, so that it wasn't the ceremony that we were having that the bell would be rung first, that it'd be rung by the congregation first.
So the goal was to finish it in time for February 2016's Black History Month.
Yes,
is that right?
And the 240th anniversary.
And the 240th anniversary.
Yes.
Okay. So, but when your very first test, the congregation actually got to ring the bell.
Yeah.
What would you have done if it didn't ring?
I'm glad I don't have to answer that, because I don't know what we would have done. I think we all were so sure that it had to happen, and sometimes when you will something, it happens, and it did. Because I don't know what we would have done. I shrugged our shoulders. I don't.
So describe that moment. Who pulled the cord? Do you remember what happened when the bell finally rang again?
I don't remember who pulled it first because I was outside. But to hear that bell, because we lowered the bell so that it would get a richer sound. So we actually moved where the bell was originally also in order to put it in a much more acoustically sound place. So to be outside and to hear that bell ring for the first time in nearly half a century, I don't know that I can put that into. It was emotional. It was emotional when I rang the bell. It just, one of the freedom bells rings again.
Yeah. So, from a historian's perspective, which you are, it's got to mean so many things to you on so many different levels. Not only did you help restore it,
right,
but knowing the history of it. Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of what I'm trying to give the listener a sense of why this is so critical?
As a Black man in America, when I grew up as a child, we were taught history, but we weren't necessarily taught our history. And so I was always, I always felt, and they always treated slavery like it was something to be ashamed of, like our ancestors were something to be ashamed about. And it wasn't until I began working at Colonial Williamsburg that I realized that what I do is I give a voice to those who were voiceless for so long. It is an honor to be able to share the stories of our ancestors, to be able to give them a voice, to be able to make them understood, to be able to make them a part of the American identity. This bell is a piece of the American identity. It is a piece of what makes all of us, no matter what we look like as Americans, who we are. It helps tell us who we are. That's what history does. And that's the importance of it. A piece of my history, a piece of what makes me a person and what makes me proud of the people that came before me that make it possible for me to sit here and talk to you. This was a piece of their history that we can now hear. And
it still
cried.
Makes you emotional.
I cried, and I still get teary-eyed when I talk about it.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the historic First Baptist Church of Williamsburg and the Let Freedom Ring Bell with Connie Matthews Harshaw, president of the Let Freedom Ring Foundation, and Stephen Seals with Colonial Williamsburg. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Connie, you've rung the bell?
I have.
What was it for you?
It was emotional. Because the very sound of that bell pierces my soul. It lets me know that, being a product of the civil rights era, I can tell everybody, since they can't see me, I'm 64. And so I lived through the civil rights era. I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama. I saw the things that my dad, a World War II veteran, could not do in this country. And I was taught my history, except when I came to Virginia. I went to middle school here, Thomas Eden Junior High School. And in my Virginia history book, there was not any information about Black people in Williamsburg. As a matter of fact, we didn't even want to go on the field trip because we thought it was just a white thing that you did. You went up, you saw these horses and carriages, and you didn't see anything that looked like you. Mm-hmm. But then I knew, the intellectual nerd that I am, that it was 52% Black. And I thought, well, where's the stuff about those people? So every time I hear that bell, it reminds me that we still have work to do. But we've come a long way.
In that February of 2016, so you invited people to come and ring the bell. Yes. And tell me about that experience, because you had celebrities, you had politicians, you had people, regular folk.
We did. And I think one of the most powerful visuals that I took away from that was the descendants of Thomas Jefferson.
Yep.
On that pew, we had white people and we had African-American people that were descendants from the same person.
Wow.
And that visually was something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, because it tells me in this country, whether it was by love or any other thing, we share a bloodline. And it is American history, and we need to also. So the stars were good. I mean,
stars were nice.
Yeah. Valerie Simpson singing in the church, playing our piano. That was really nice.
I bet that was beautiful.
I mean, And so, Danny Glover moderating. That was very, very. But the most poignant moment for me was seeing those descendants pull that rope and ring that bell, sending a message to America that, you know what, we have more in common than we have different.
Wow. There's a question from social media. Toby Lynn Word writes, loving the conversation. Does the bell ring at certain times now? Does it sound different than other church bells in Williamsburg?
It rings always. You have to make an appointment. You can do that by going on our website, and you make an appointment. You get your own time with the bell for your moment.
Tell them your website.
Moment. Our website is First Baptist Church 1776.org. So it's very easy to remember. First Baptist Church 1776.org. You can come and ring the bell, and you make an appointment and you come. And yes, it sounds, again, Stephen said that they lowered it so that the sound, you can hear it. And you can also see it on screen.
Okay. Our phone lines are lit up, so let's go to talk to some folks. Bobby joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Bobby. You're on the air.
Hello, this is Bobby Braxton. I can say Stephen and Connie, you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby.
I wanted to tell one story about the bell with a gentleman that rang it. He came in with his family. He was tall, maybe he was about 6'5", 6'6", a heavy-set man. Walked in, and his kids and his wife were ringing it, and they asked him if he wanted to. He said no, he didn't want to. He didn't like doing things like that. So we kind of persuaded him. We had a couple of folks that persuaded him. He came over. He started ringing the bell and ringing it, and he wouldn't let it go. And he started crying.
Oh.
And he would not let that rope go. And we had to actually persuade him to please let it go. And that story, the reason I tell that story is because the emotions ran high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, just about everyone that rang it, including the young ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bobby, for sharing your story. We appreciate the call.
Good day.
Good day, Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
You know, I tell you, I was reading some of the comments online from people who rung the bell. And one lady said, I ring the bell for my mother who did not have the opportunity to see the first black president of the United States. I mean, there's so many different reasons. Another one, just honored for the opportunity to ring the bell. And Linda Rowe, in honor of Marie Shepard, historian at First Baptist until her death in 2002, tireless in her dedication to the history and inspiring story of this remarkable congregation. On behalf of all who believe in freedom and justice for all. So there's a different meaning for each person, but it clearly is resonating with folks. Let's talk to Mary in Cortland. Hi, Mary. You're on the air.
Hey, thank you. I'm so glad to hear this story. And I really have more of a comment than a question, but I'm pleased to see the role of Colonial Williamsburg in restoring the bell, because I think to some extent it brings the foundation's role sort of full circle, because it's my understanding that the reason that the church moved was because Colonial Williamsburg wanted the land that the original church was on in order to recreate an 18th century city. And so they bought out the land, and then the church moved. And the current church is lovely as well, but it's really nice to see Colonial Williamsburg coming full circle and trying to restore some of that history. And I'll take the response off air. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mary, for the call. Both of you are looking at each other, so you clearly know this story, right?
So, First Baptist, even back in the 18th century, it was, from the records we can find, it was a congregation of 500 people.
Wow.
So that original building that they had on Nassau Street, I still hear stories about it. We have some photos of it. But the congregation was getting too big for the building. They used to have to open the windows, and people would have to stand outside
so they could listen in?
So they could listen to the sermon.
Overflow rooms.
Yeah. It was, outside was the overflow room. So First Baptist, in a lot of ways, had outgrown their building. And it just so happened that, the Rockefellers came around and they were looking for this property. So they were the ones that paid for that building to make sure then that the church would be able to build a bigger building on Scotland Street. So that is the story of how it happened. So that is true. Williamsburg wanted that land, and First Baptist Church was able to build a larger church because of it.
Do you think that are you guys going to stay on Scotland Street? Are you? We
plan to. I can tell you though that that was also at a time before automobiles. There was no parking lot. I mean, and we, the congregation, we have to have a parking lot. Yeah. And so I listened to Mary because I knew where she was going with this comment. But I wanted to say the reason why Stephen and I are sitting here is because of the new partnership that we've developed with Colonial Williamsburg and the First Baptist Church and Let Freedom Ring. Nassau Street, we want to make sure that the story is started there and told and continues on to Scotland Street. And so we've been working closely over the last few months to try to make that happen. And we have every expectation that it is going to happen.
Oh, yes.
So that, the visitors can have that experience.
And have the full experience.
Story,
Let's take a couple more calls and then we'll talk about the foundation itself. Let's see. Ray joins us from Hampton. Hi, Ray. You're on the air.
Hello, I'm enjoying this conversation.
Thank you.
This is Ray Liddell from Hampton, Virginia. And Queen Street Baptist Church, of which I'm a member, is one of the daughter churches of First Baptist Church.
Absolutely, that's right.
Right. And it was a thrill for us, several of us who would come up to ring the bell. We just felt that deep connection to that bell. So we just appreciate knowing that it is being recognized. And just keep up the good work.
So, Ray, you did ring the bell yourself.
I did, yes.
Wow.
I did.
An experience you won't forget, huh?
Right. And we've come up and fellowshipped with them during their anniversary month on several occasions.
Oh, fantastic.
So, again, one of the daughter churches, one of the offspring of First Baptist Church is Queen Street Baptist Church in Hampton, Virginia.
Okay, thank you so very much. I appreciate your phone call. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Connie, you are the president of the Let Freedom Ring Foundation. In full disclosure to my audience, I am a board member. I appreciate being asked to be a board member. And it is a working board.
It is a working board.
But let's talk about what the purpose is and what you're trying to do going forward.
Okay. So in 2016, we were honored to have the bell restored. And then we thought that was the best thing that could happen to us. But then President Obama rang the bell to open the National Museum of the African American Museum in Washington. And so then all of the sort of the voices and the loud, celebrations, we thought, okay, now what? Now what? So we thought about it and we thought, we can't let it stop here. We have to protect and preserve not just the bell, but the historic artifacts and the prominence of this church in this place at this time. So we established the foundation. And on this foundation, I've got to tell you, I'm honored to be the president. We have, of course, Barbara Ham. We have Virginia State Delegate. We have the former mayor. We have historians. We have amazing partnerships with Colonial Williamsburg and Jamestown because we want everybody to know we are serious about integrating African American history into the fabric of American history. So we want to try to pull the nation and the children and the visitors that come to Williamsburg in to learn the story that was not previously told. So that's what we're doing. We're finding out it's not just about the structure. It's not just about the bell. It's not just about, all of the other artifacts that we have, records of Dr. Martin Luther King's visit in 1962 and Rosa Parks' visit, or either Bishop Curry's, sermon that he delivered. But it's also the stories from the members.
So if someone wants to participate, is there a website for the foundation itself?
There is. There's a toggle on the church's website, but there's also a foundation. You can First Baptist Church 1776.org and then you /foundation.
Okay.
Yes, but you can get to it. If you scroll down, dead center of the page, you'll see Let Freedom Ring Foundation.
And there are tours of the church as well as to ring the bell to see other artifacts and so forth.
There are. There are.
Okay. Is there a charge? Is there a charge?
No, there isn't a charge.
Okay. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Liz joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Liz. You're on the air.
Good morning. Good morning, Connie. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Liz.
Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. Oh, afternoon now. It's almost 1.
It's my morning.
Oh, it's your morning. Okay.
Good for you.
Good conversation. I have a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention in regard to the cleaning and the restoration of the bell.
Okay.
It was originally thought that the bell was around 800 pounds, but the bell really is about 400 pounds.
Okay.
And cleaning and restoring the bell was the primary focus of CW partnering with First Baptist Church. And the foundation that the bell rests on, that wooden piece that it was resting on, was the part that was really rotting out, as well as the rope around the bell when you pull it to ring the bell. So those were the two critical issues regarding restoration. Once that was removed, and that is on display so everybody can see that it was truly unsafe to ring the bell, it would have fallen right through the vestibule of the church. I'd like to also bring to your attention that at that time, the only female trustee of First Baptist Church that understood that through Marie Shepherd, who started the research, was Liz Montgomery.
Aha.
So I'm just letting you know that I am very familiar. Have been up in the steeple several times to see it, long before we were talking about restoring the bell.
Yeah.
But we are very grateful for CW in their partnership in that.
Yes, we are.
And I just want to also mention that the tour ministry is responsible for the tours at First Baptist Church under the leadership of Opaline Davis. And when you come to the church, you will get a chance to see the film. You will get a good tour going through several artifacts and pictures basically set up from the 240th anniversary at this time. We are trying to move forward with the Let Freedom Ring Foundation to take us to a different level so that we can have those displays done in a more professional way.
Okay.
I
got
I'm going to say that because it takes time. Just like the Women's Auxiliary raised those few funds to buy that bell, it's going to take us a few dollars. We don't charge for our tours, but we certainly do accept any donations that you have to
Thank you, Liz. We appreciate your phone call. Thank you. Liz just brought it on home, didn't she?
She did.
We appreciate the call. Thanks so much, Liz. I have a question for you, Stephen.
Yes.
Do you envision having an enactment done at the church? Like, like when you go to Colonial Williamsburg and there are people in character or in not character. What is the right way to say it? But yeah, in other words, having a Reverend Moses, welcome them to the church. Or
funny enough, back in 2016, we did do an interpretation in the church with one of our other Nation Builder characters, James Ingram, who plays Gowan Pamphlet, one of the founders of First Baptist. He's been playing him for a very long time now. And actually, he recently joined the congregation, didn't he?
He recently joined the congregation, which was a true moment for all of us to see Reverend Gowan Pamphlet come down the aisle and join the First Baptist Church.
Wow, that must be incredible.
And completely in character.
Oh.
He was in character that morning that he joined.
Oh, how fantastic was that?
It was visually, it was just really amazing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
What about the children at the church? Are they absorbing this? Do they understand?
They are. They are getting more of it. We would like to make it mandatory for all of our members to go through Liz's tour and include the children too. But I think we're getting the message across.
Okay. Jerry joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Jerry. You're on the air.
How you doing? The church bells are the quote-unquote olden days term for ringtones we use today. I actually study audiology, so most cities that would have, and I've heard the bell in Williamsburg ring, most cities would actually take the time. No two church would have the same note nor tone. So you could literally tell which church was ringing the bell. I grew up in a community of about 4,000 people, 10 churches, and we literally can tell you what church is ringing what bell at what time.
Oh, wow.
Because they literally, and this would have been that back in there, they would have taken the time to make sure that bell didn't have the same tone nor note as any other bell in that area.
Okay, thanks, Jerry, for your input. Wow. Jerry says he's an audiologist, and those were the ringtones of the past. And so that's very, very interesting. So we only have a little bit of time left. Encourage people to come and tell them why.
Well, let me just tell you, we are a historic church. We are I don't know, we're fortified by our past, our historic past, but we're focused on our future. And it is a living museum. And I got to tell you, if you come and you worship there, you will get what you came for. You will be inspired. You will feel like you are part of history, but you're also getting to witness where we're going in the future. We've had a very aggressive effort to desegregate that 11 o'clock hour every Sunday. So we've had different people join our church. And that is just amazing to see that it was founded by slaves for slaves, but now in this 21st century, we're getting everybody that comes in, all of the very, very different perspectives and different styles of worship. And we're now focused on trying to get more involved in the community. So you've got to come to First Baptist because it is an experience that you will always have when you think back.
And we're also planning activities that we'll talk about in the future for the Let Freedom Ring Foundation.
Absolutely.
As we continue to work on making it more of a museum quality in terms of the display of artifacts of the bell itself and making sure that that history is preserved in the right way.
Yes,
correct?
A living museum. That's right.
A living museum. Stephen, you get the last 2 minutes. The history. Talk to me about the history and why people still need to understand that our history, African American history, is American history.
I equate it to, when you have members of your family and maybe they're not the best person in the world, and you as a family will talk about that. But when someone who is not a member of the family says something bad about that family member, that's not okay, right?
Right.
That's what it means. Your history is your identity. It is who you are. And by making sure that the history of our people is not just our history, but is part of the American identity, the American history, it helps us all to understand that we are a family. We all are on the same team. We're all trying to gain the same things. We're all trying to make the world a little bit better for those that come after us. And when you're able to see yourself in your history, it just makes that history deeper for you. It makes it, I like to say that bringing the African American voice into our history is not diluting European history. It's making history richer, more inclusive, richer, grander. It helps us to be more, to try to be more, as the founder said, to make a more perfect union. And you're only going to do that together.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that. And give me the website one more time.
That is firstbaptistchurch1776.org. Please go and visit. Please.
That is Connie Harshaw, who is the president of the Let Freedom Ring Foundation, and Stephen Seals with Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Thank you so much, and we will be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. A military fraternity is working to help restore the oldest public African American cemetery on the Virginia Peninsula. Pleasant Shade Cemetery dates back to the 1800s and is the final resting place for many prominent Black leaders. But years ago, Pleasant Shade was abandoned by its owners and quickly disappeared under tall grass, weeds, and trash. As Lisa Godley found out, the members of Kappa Lambda Chi Fraternity Incorporated won't rest until they turn things around.
Because there's no identifiable signage to tell you where you are, you could easily pass Pleasant Shade Cemetery and never know that this 20-acre grove holds significant history. Take a moment to look at some of the sunken or toppled markers, and you'll soon realize that this is much more than a final resting place. Located off Shell Road in Hampton, Pleasant Shade is the oldest and largest public African American cemetery on the peninsula. Abandoned by its owners in 2007, it didn't take long before tall grass, thick weeds, and piles of trash blanketed the grounds. The East End Neighborhood Association of the Peninsula, Incorporated, soon stepped in. Determined to restore dignity to the cemetery, members called on volunteers to help, and military fraternity Kappa Lambda Chi was among the first to answer the call. Member James Sylvester couldn't believe what he was seeing.
The first thing that went through my mind is that me and my brothers have a lot of work to do. So we've been doing a lot of cutting grass and picking up trash that people who walk through that area will pollute out there. And due to the fact that the grave site has a lot of history and is only a small percentage of church members who go out there to do the best they can, they are seeking more volunteers. So I said, you know what? Well, let me bring this to my fraternity, and we're going to get out there and we're going to make things happen.
Armed with lawnmowers, weed whackers, and a desire to help, the brothers of Kappa Lambda Chi went to work, doing whatever they could to improve the look of the historic cemetery.
The first day that we were out there, we was able to cut grass, plant flowers, just kind of clean up around the area. We was limited with resources as far as the tools and the machinery that we had, so we just made it work with what we were able to bring out there.
Not only is the cemetery itself historic, but some of the people buried there are history makers themselves. People like former Newport News Mayor Jesse Ratliff and the founder of the Church of God, evangelist Elder Solomon Lightfoot Mishaw. The first African-American female attorney in Virginia, Lavinia Fleming Poe, was laid to rest at Pleasant Shade, and so was Dr. William Dickerson, one of the founders of Whitaker Memorial Hospital, and James Hainsworth, Jr., an actor with an impressive movie and television career, just to name a few.
It's sad that what we're trying to clean up was actually worn down, tore down like it was, so we're slowly getting it up there. You know, maybe when people hear us talk about this cemetery, maybe they would be like, okay, well, cool, we come out there, we'll check it out, we'll give back as well.
Meanwhile, the East End Neighborhood Association works to gain recognition for Pleasant Shade. The group has ongoing fundraising in hopes of one day landscaping the entrance and erecting a sign that identifies the cemetery. They also continue to petition the federal government to add Pleasant Shade to the National Register of Historic Places. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
Today, a day full of history lessons. The brothers of Kappa Lambda Chi will return to Pleasant Shade Cemetery in July for another cleanup day. If you'd like to join them, check out their Facebook page under Kappa Lambda Chi Military Fraternity Incorporated for the day and time. And just two things to remind you of that are coming up in our area. Tomorrow is the 8th annual Sankofa Project's International Day of Remembrance ceremony. It's at 11 a.m. at Buckrow Beach in Hampton, Virginia. This is a commemoration of the Africans who perished during the transatlantic slave trade. Come out. They ask you to wear white or African attire, and it is a beautiful, moving ceremony. So if you'd like to participate or want more information, call 757-317-0001. And also next Saturday, the 15th of June, I have the honor and privilege of serving as the keynote speaker for Mothers for Mortgages, or Mortgages for Mothers. How about that? It's called Mortgages for Mothers. It's a program where you will learn how to buy a home, particularly if you are a single mother. So come out to ODU's Web Center. You can register at mortgagesformothers.com, and they do encourage you to register, or you can call 1-800-345-3655. Would love to see you there next Saturday. And our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Jordan Yowell answered our phones. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. You're listening to Another View.